Hey, this is CB Smallwood, and welcome to Mental Junk Food, where we talk about all things comics, sci-fi, horror, fantasy, pop culture, and everything in between. And today we're going to be talking about I guess a controversial subject, but something that needs to be discussed possibly, because I think it's interesting, and I think it's going to have impact on the comic book industry for the next 5 to 10 years and beyond. Okay. And this is something that we've already been dealing with in one fashion or form or another. And it's something that everybody's painfully aware of now, or probably should be, or getting ready to be one way or another. And what I'm talking about is the culture war in comics. And it sounds so odd or weird or whatever to say that, because comic books was a safe haven from the oppressiveness of a lot of things in society that bears down on you, that tries to make you choose this or choose that or be this or be that. It was a place where comic fans, people who enjoy escapism, can go and escape from society and take a breather and kind of just enjoy this fiction of these gods and demigods and mortals who rise above being just mere mortals and doing things that are beyond imagination and beyond belief, and striving to do better and striving to do good, and making wrongs right, and all this other stuff, just fixing things and having fun. And comics were fun. Comics were fun. Comics had been fun for a long time until the past decade or so. Probably a little bit longer than that, but the past decade or so, it's been pretty bad, in my opinion. Now, other people may disagree. Other people may say, CB, in the past 10 years, I think comic books have been wonderful. And, if that's what you think, then that's cool, because everything's really subjective at the end of the day. What I may like, you may hate. What you may hate, I might like, and then there might be days where we both might like the same thing, and other days where we might both hate the same thing. So, potato, what have you. But anyway, culture war in comics. So, what made me bring up this topic? Why am I talking about it? So basically, to give you a quick recap, and I'll try not to talk too long. In the past 10 years, give or take, there has been this emerging culture war in comics, and it first started, some may disagree with this, but it first started with Marvel Comics, in my opinion. And what ended up happening is 10 years ago, give or take, basically Marvel, I think, was given marching orders, probably from Disney, that they want to start using the publishing end of Marvel Comics as a kind of like a testing ground for new ideas. And if these new ideas are successful, then they can take these ideas and put them into film and cartoons and make a lot of money. Because for Disney, there's a lot more money in the film aspect of Marvel than there is in comics, because at this point they're just losing money on Marvel Comics. But they make so much money in film that any losses that they take in the publication is well worth it, because it's barely even a drop in the bucket. So Disney uses Marvel as a testing ground for new ideas, and also they are underpaying the artists and the writers in Marvel, because it's almost like free labor. Consider to what the money that they make with the films, in terms of billions. They're getting a lot of free labor, because I'm pretty sure, I shouldn't say pretty sure, but I have a feeling that people that work in Hollywood as writers and concept artists probably make a lot more money than the actual artists and writers who come up with these concepts at Marvel. Anyway, moving on from that, Disney uses Marvel as a testing ground for new ideas. And it's cheap, it's cost effective for them, and once these ideas seem worthwhile, they'll put them on the big screen and make even more money. So I think that Marvel, sometime around a decade ago, got marching orders from Disney. It's like, hey, we want you to take these characters, and We want a more ethnically and culturally and gender wise a diverse group of characters in Marvel. Now, that's a really cool idea. I'm in support of that. I think the overwhelming majority of comic book fans are in support of that. The problem is, instead of Marvel and the editorial staff and the comic book creators at Marvel, instead of them creating brand new characters, brand new superheroes, what they did was they took some new characters that they created and put them in the guise of the superheroes that we all grew up with. And they did it all at once. They didn't do it, one after another. They just, it was all at once, and it was very evident of what they were doing, and it created a backlash that didn't happen overnight, but it just kind of it was like a snowball effect. It kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger until it's eventually like a landslide. So what ended up happening is they had it in their head that they was going to replace Spider-Man, Peter Parker, replace him as Spider-Man, replace Bruce Banner with somebody else to be the Hulk, replace Thor with somebody else to be Thor. Same thing with Iron Man. Same thing with Captain America, on and on and on. And they did this all at once. And the thing is, what the editorial staff and what the comic book creators at Marvel failed to understand is not only was it too much to do all at once, but it was also a slap in the face to people that grew up with these characters, because these characters are not just comic book characters, they're family. To give you a good example, one of my favorite comics is Hulk. I really enjoy Hulk. There's various reasons for that, but I just enjoy the comic book Hulk. And to me, Hulk is Bruce Banner. And the thing with Bruce Banner is, I remember Bruce Banner, he started out as a scientist, and he still is a scientist, but he started out as a scientist, and he was working on gamma radiation and eventually a gamma bomb, and he tested one of the first gamma bombs, and he found out that Rick Jones, just some kid, was out in the testing area, so he went to go save him. Out of all the people at this military base, it was Bruce Banner that chose to save this kid, and he did. And then the gamma bomb went off, and eventually he became the Hulk. And the interesting thing is, Rick Jones, this kid that he saved, lived with the guilt of causing this horror that would be set upon Bruce Banner for the rest of his life, and the consequences that he would have to deal with that. And then from that, there was this guy that did not like Bruce Banner anyway, which was Thunderbolt Ross. And then he liked Bruce Banner even less than once he became the Hulk. And as time went on, and Bruce Banner ended up falling in love with the general's daughter, which is Betty Ross. And then sometime later, Hulk's been part of this team or that team, and he ends up going to Las Vegas. He becomes Mr. Fix-It because it turns out Bruce Banner has he's schizophrenic. He has multiple personality disorder, and it stems from his childhood, where there's a lot of abuse on part of his father, maybe mostly psychologically, I don't know, but anyway, Mr. Fix-It was one of his personalities that popped up in Las Vegas, and he ended up falling in love with somebody there. I think her name was Marlo. And then later on, Marlo ended up shacking up with Rick Jones. Bruce Banner got back with Betty, and Betty got married to Bruce, and so she became Betty Banner. And later on, Thunderbolt Ross died and came back. And unfortunately, Betty Banner, she ended up, I think, got radiation poisoning or something like that, got cancer, and she died. I could be wrong on that, but the point is, I know all this background of this character and all his triumphs and struggles and hardships and all the stuff that he went through, because I went through it with him. And to me, Bruce Banner could be like my brother or my uncle or cousin or something like that. He feels like family. It's not because of his skin pigmentation or where he comes from or any of that stuff. it's just the fact that I grew up reading his stories, and then one day, I find out that not only him, but like pretty much all the characters that I grew up with, Steve Rogers, Peter Parker, Thor's Thor, but Tony Stark and all of them, they're gone, and they've been replaced with these other people that's going to be filling the roles. And I'm fine with those other people, I really am. But why can't those other people be brand new superheroes that I can get emotionally invested in as much as I am in Bruce Banner, Tony Stark, and Thor, and Steve Rogers, and what have you, And for whatever reason, Marvel didn't understand that, and Marvel just didn't care as a whole, and they just could not understand what I just explained to you. That the fans don't just see these characters as characters, we see them as family, and that's why we get upset. I remember like many years ago, or several times in DC's history, where like they replaced Hal Jordan. He was Green Lantern, Hal Jordan was Green Lantern, and they replaced him with somebody else in the 90s. I think his name was Kyle. And people did like Kyle, but they wanted Hal Jordan back. Same thing with Flash and stuff like that. So it's not a ethnicity thing or a cultural thing or whatever. It's just a family thing. And we just, it's like coming home one day and somebody claims that they're your mom, but they're not. They're some stranger. They might be nice. They may seem sweet or whatever, but it's like, like your mother or father's been replaced by somebody else. Like, well, who are you? It's like, oh, I'm your mom or dad. No. It's like, I don't remember you from my past. It's like, well, I'm going to be your mom and dad now. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. You can be my neighbor. Maybe you could be like godparents or something like that. But my mom and dad's who my mom and dad is. So that's something that Marvel never understood. And they started basically in private meetings and public statements in one way or another, either boldly or implying that a lot of their fans were bigoted or racist or misogynistic or what have you. And it just wasn't true. It was just a really big misunderstanding, because things got so heated that I think a lot of people couldn't communicate very well where they were coming from or why they were doing what they were doing. And maybe some people were being dishonest about things, or maybe not, who knows. But it eventually just snowballed, and it culminated into a really, really big mess to where we're at today. Because from that start at Marvel, a lot of stuff started bleeding over into DC and into Image and all these different publishers in terms of how comic book creators and the editorial staffs of these companies started treating the fans. And it's just really, really interesting how things have changed. You got major publishers that are no longer concerned of operating as a business and trying to make profits selling comics and listening to the readership. Instead, it's about pushing personal agendas and this sort of thing, as opposed to running a company, I suppose. I don't know. I mean, when you got big studios like Warner Brothers and Disney backing you, I guess you can have the freedom to do that. I don't know. But anyway, things have gotten ugly, and so now there's this culture war that's spewed over, and things have really come to a head. And basically, within the last week or two, as of this video, there's a very successful Indiegogo campaign about this comic book, this graphic novel called Jawbreakers, Lost Souls, which was written by Richard Meyer. Now, for those that don't know, Richard Meyer has a very, very successful YouTube channel called Diversity in Comics. And Diversity in Comics is a channel that basically is a result of a lot of things that's been happening in the comic book industry. And Richard Meyer is a comic book fan, and he's like a lot of people, lifelong fan, and he saw some things that he disagreed with for one reason or another. Doesn't matter if you agree with him or not, but he just seen some things as a fan he disagreed with. And because we live in a digital age where we can reach out and actually conversate with a lot of the editorial staff at these comic book companies and these comic book creators, he was able to have a dialogue with a lot of these peoples, and and a lot of times that dialogue went sour really, really quick. And I don't know if it's because of his demeanor or their demeanor or maybe both. Who knows? I wasn't there. I've not been following what happens on Facebook and Twitter that closely. And you can always check out his channel and a lot of other people that's covered it to have better information or perspective or whatever or what have you on it. Okay. But what I want to talk to you about is the actual channel itself, Diversity in Comics, where they cover they do comic book reviews. They do roast ever so often, but I think that's kind of been phased out of the channel. They also do a lot of talking about the professionalism and lack of professionalism in the comic book industry, as well as a lot of stuff that's been said on usually Twitter. A lot of comic book creators and editorial staff, they say things on Twitter that gets them a lot of heat, and then vice versa. It's a big mess. So anyway, that's that in a nutshell is diversity in comics. And I don't mean to paint it in a flattering light or an unflattering light or any of that. I'm just trying to talk off the cuff here as stuff comes to me. So there's going to be some people that's going to hate Diversity in Comics YouTube channel. They're going to say that is a blight on humanity. It's regressive, and it's insert whatever today's popular lingo of something negative today, there. While other people will say that Diversity in Comics is a breath of fresh air. They say things that's been needed to be said for a while, So it's very polarizing. And it's not so much that the channel itself is polarizing. It's like the whole country. America is very polarized. And I dare say maybe even the world's becoming more polarized. It's like we're going back in time instead of moving forward, And the thing is, we've lost a certain decorum, a certain civility, and ability to talk to one another as human beings and look past our differences and look at what our commonalities are and try to understand one another or where we're coming from and why we think and feel the way that we do, and to see if we can find that middle ground. And for some reason, one reason or another, maybe it's just poor education in this country. Maybe it's just poor education in the world. Who knows? I don't know. But for whatever reason, we've lost the ability to talk to one another. And so now everything's just so combative, and people just won't let go of things, and everything becomes these emotional arguments. And I'm not saying one side does this or the other side does this, whatever. That's not the point of this video. I mean, you can make up your mind on what side or who or what makes emotional arguments. That's irrelevant at this point in this video. What the point is things have really come to a head, and that it's undeniable now. There is an actual, as weird as it is to say, a culture war in comics. Wow. And it's between fans and comic creators and editorial staff at various companies. It's insane. Wow. Things have gotten out of hand. So anyway, Jawbreakers, successful Indiegogo campaign done by Richard Meyer of Diversity in Comics fame. That company, but Richard Meyer's Jawbreakers on Indiegogo initially kind of petered out at $230,000 to $240,000, which is really, really good. And then, out of the blue, out of nowhere, Mark Waid interjects himself between Richard Meyer and Antarctic Press, which was going to publish Jawbreakers. They were going to, once all the business and all the loose ends got took care of, Antarctic Press was going to print Jawbreakers. And so basically what happened about a week or two ago, give or take, is Mark Waid, who has a vendetta against Richard Meyer, for one reason or another, he called up Antarctic Press, and he's basically like, hey, you know who you're getting in bed with? You know what this guy's all about? He says this and says that and blah, 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 blah. Now, I don't know word for word what Mark Waid said. I don't know who he talked to, but the only thing people know for sure is that he made a phone call, okay? And what I can say for absolutely for sure is after Mark Waid made contact with Antarctic Press, Antarctic Press dropped Richard Meyer's Jawbreakers. I mean, they dropped it like it's hot. Oh boy, that's terrible. Yeah, but yeah, they dropped that book, and it was a result of Mark Waid getting involved in that situation. Now, some people may say like, well, maybe he should have, because Richard Meyer has said this, and this, and this is offensive, or whatever, what have you. While other people may say that Mark Waid had absolutely no business getting involved between a publisher and someone being published by that publisher, and using his position as a Marvel Comics employee and as somebody who's worked for various companies as an industry professional to try to knock somebody out of getting published. And again, that's not what this video is about, picking sides or whatever. You can decide, for yourself, who you believe or who you want to back or whatever, but that's irrelevant. The point is, things are getting worse, okay? And they're going to get much worse before it gets better, because now there's been a shot across the bow in a big way. And there's stuff that led up to this point, but now it's here, okay? Now it's here, and it's like, how do you turn back from this? Is it possible? How do we have a good conversation or a good dialogue with comic creators and editorial staff at various companies, with fans, and with fans to comic creators and editorial staff at various companies? How do you get that dialogue to be good again? How do you get people to listen to one another that fundamentally disagree on every single aspect? So it's very concerning, and maybe for a lot of you, this video's been a big waste of time, but I think it's something worthy of talking about, and where do you all see the comic book industry moving forward from this point? Because I do personally feel that the Mark Waid situation and the Jawbreakers sets a really, really bad precedent for things moving forward. Not just in the fact that, how people's going to interact with one another moving forward, and how polarizing this is going to be moving forward, but also in terms of like, are we going to have industry professionals now, picking and choosing what books, who's allowed to get published and who's not? I mean, I guess there is a certain degree about that, but it used to be based purely on what sells, on what people's actually going to go out and buy and read. But now it's based on personal. If it's based on personal vendettas and what what industry professionals who they view should be allowed in their community or club, then it's going to hurt the health and vitality of comics, and it's an extremely not a good thing. It's just not a good thing as a whole. So anyway, where do you see the comic book industry moving forward? Do you think things are going to get better or improve, or are they going to get worse? Do you support Diversity Comics, Richard Meyer, in his efforts to get published? Do you support Mark Waid and him, blocking it, and you feel he was justified in doing what he did? I will say one other note before I hop off this video. As of this video, Jawbreakers has officially got $297,000, and I expect before the week is out that they'll probably hit the 300,000 mark or more, and it's all because of Mark Waid interjecting himself in this situation, right or wrong. Let me know in the comment section down below if you like this video, found it informative or whatever. Please remember to hit that like button. And be kept up to all my latest shenanigans. Please remember to hit that subscribe button, follow button, or what have you. And this is CB Smallwood, and I will see you in the next video.